She is the worst polling Democrat against Donald Trump in history on national polls. No one is performing worse than her. No one's performing worse than her among blacks, among Hispanics, the worst performing Democrat in modern history among those demographics, worst performing polling-wise among Jews. She is losing key factions of the Democratic base. Muslim voters, she's at under 50, she's at 52% in the latest CAIR poll among black Muslims. She is not doing well.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, because that's the most important thing you can do for me on this channel. What it does, that helps make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get the notifications, and it also helps to push this video through the YouTube algorithm as well. Secondly, if you're new to the channel, or maybe you've been ghost watching this channel for quite some time now, please do me a favor and yourself a favor by hitting the subscribe button, as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button, so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms to your family and friends and inform them on this news and information. And yes, that does help to give me a slight boost in the YouTube algorithm as well. And with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today we have to discuss how MSNBC is in complete shambles, doing mental gymnastics in order to either dismiss or make sense of the polling, which shows that either one, Trump has closed the gap between him and Kamala Harris, to which they are tied for president of the United States, or Trump has significantly closed the gap and has gotten closer to shutting it. Either way, we all know that Trump is surging in the polls. And like I stated, MSNBC is struggling to handle this news. Now, what I want to do first, before we get into some of the hosts from MSNBC struggling to make sense of all this, I want to pull up this CNN clip first, and let's listen to what he has to say concerning party ID advantage nationally, because I do want to take a moment to kind of break that down a little bit. I think this is really important to understand.
All right, so party ID nationally. You go to October, November of 2016, Democrats had a 3-point advantage. You go 4 years ago, Democrats had a 6-point advantage. Look at where we are today, Manu. Republicans with a 1-point advantage. A very different picture, very much mirroring what we see in the party registration numbers in those key battleground states, and Pennsylvania in particular.
And it actually just shows you, too, why Harris is doing what she's trying to do. She's trying to moderate a little bit on these issues, trying to reach those very voters, because the party registration is changing, and the demographics of the voters are changing. And those are the people she needs to attract.
Absolutely. And you know, the GOP leads by a point in party identification right now. The average when the Republican Party loses is the Democrats ahead by 8. When the Republican Party wins, the average party ID advantage for Democrats is 3. Republicans right now, Manu, are doing even better than the average when they win. If there's one little nugget that I think Republicans are really hopeful for, it's this party ID and this party registration data. It really points in a good direction for them and for Donald Trump.
Wow.
Now, this is horrible news for Kamala Harris and MSDNC. But let's get a little bit into what they mean by this. And I know it's pretty self-explanatory for the most part, but I do want to unpack it just a little bit more so we understand what's going on concerning party ID. What they are discussing are those who are registered voters. What do you, or who do you identify as? Or I should say, what do you identify as, right? Are you an independent? Are you a Democrat? Or are you a Republican? What I want to do right now is pull up this Gallup poll, in which the article is titled "Independent Party ID Tied for High, Democratic ID at New Low." And what it shows here, and I'll zoom in just a little bit more so you can see better, is that when you asked registered voters, right? When they asked registered voters in politics as of today, do you consider yourself a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent? As you can see here, 43% identify as independent, and 27% identify as Republican and Democrat. So Republicans and Democrat, as far as those who identify as either or, it's a tie. But here's where the Republicans begin to break away in this situation. When you ask independents, where do you lean politically? Though you are an independent, what's your leaning? 45% of them say they lean Republican, to 43% who say they lean Democrat. That is extremely important to note. So even with independents, they are leaning now more towards Republican. And what's even more interesting about this is that you see, since 1992 onwards, When you get to 2002, that's the first time Republicans tied with Democrats concerning their leaning, but they didn't lead. Same thing in 2003. They tied with Democrats, but didn't lead. Then they dropped back down. And it's not until you get all the way here to 2023 that Republicans have finally taken the lead with independents as far as their leaning as concerned. So we're talking about from 1992 onwards, Republicans have never led with independents up until today. And that says a lot about the Harris and Biden administration, that they have pushed independents to be more conservative and to the side of the Republican Party. Now, what I want to do is that I want to get into some more polling data from CNN just concerning the Black and Latino vote before we get into the belly aching from MSDNC. So let me pull this up for you on the screen right now.
Line is this. At this particular hour, if you believe the polling, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance with black voters since Richard Nixon back in 1960. Not 68, since 1960. That's 64 years ago. Among Hispanic voters, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance for Republicans since 2004 and George W. Bush.
Seemingly everyone is going and leaning Republican now this election. And what the scary thing is for them, as it pertains to the DNC, is that there is a very good chance that once they lean Republican, they will not come back. They will not come back once the dam is broken on that. And the taboo, as far as black voters are concerned, the taboo around being a Republican and voting conservative, once that sheds away and smashes into a million pieces, forget about it. It's pretty much over as far as those black voters that went Republican, right? And with that understanding, I want you to see this clip next from Morning Joe, where Joe Scarborough is having a conversation with a man, and they're going to literally beg Republicans. They're going to beg Republicans to vote Democrat. They're getting ready to beg and plead Republicans to say, put policy to the side for now and vote Democrat, because we just can't let Trump in office. And once again, the significance of them begging Republicans on a DNC network, the significance of them begging Republicans to vote Democrat comes from the data and information that we've just gone through concerning independents, Black and Hispanic voters, right? Who all traditionally lean left, and they now are seemingly moving to the right in droves if the data and the polling is correct. Let's listen to this here, because this is truly pathetic.
It's so interesting is, and I think you and I, you're more conservative than I am, but we come from the same zip code roughly. I haven't moved particularly.
I have to stuff. Saying Joe Scarborough is conservative is hilarious. Now, from my understanding, from what I've been told, I think he did used to be a conservative years ago, but that's far from the case now. So saying that in 2024 is pure comedy. But I'll let the gentleman continue on. I'll take it from the top. No interruptions.
One of the things that's so interesting is, and I think you and I, you're more conservative than I am, but we come from the same zip code roughly. I haven't moved particularly, right? I'm George H.W. Bush's biographer, and now, you can say, some people say, well, you're an anti-Trump Trotskyite, but I haven't moved. They have. No. And so, no. and I don't want to point a finger. I don't want people walking into the street and gnashing their teeth and having to wear sackcloth and ashes. Leave all that aside, right? We're in the conversion business. Just vote for Harris. And what I would argue is, don't tell anybody if you don't want to, right? I mean, if you go in there and you're a Republican, and I know it's hard. It's, this is part of people's identity. And when they really look at those names, they think, Democrat, taxes. How about thinking, Constitution, when you look at Trump?
Oh, this is truly pathetic. Begging Republicans to put policy to the side to vote for Harris is comedy, but it makes sense to a degree when you take into account the data and the polling that we've been seeing. But what I find even more absurd, and of course it comes from the queen of absurdities, Joy Reid, is the way in which they can literally take anything, and turn it into some sort of MAGA extremist white supremacist nonsense. And you're going to see what I mean by that right now concerning how ridiculous what she's saying is after I do a little simple expose. So let's get into what the queen of absurdities, Joy Reid, had to say, as everyone from in MSNBC staff are doing mental gymnastics to make sense of what's going on right now.
And some Democrats are starting to believe the disinformation too. Have you noticed how sharply the polls have shifted in Trump's favor over the last couple weeks? With these claims that Trump is surging with Black and Latino voters and leading in every single swing state, according to secret internal polls.
Can we stop for a second? I'm sorry. Why was she yelling right there in every single street? She sounds so angry. Why are you so angry, Joy? She sounds angry. Listen to what she says. In every single. Why are you mad?
With these claims that Trump is surging with Black and Latino voters and leading in every single swing state, according to.
Why are you so mad? I don't know. Just a question. I'm trying to figure out why she's so upset.
With these claims that Trump is surging with Black and Latino voters and leading in every single swing state, according to secret internal polls, despite all the Hitler talk. Yes, this race will be far too close. Because unfortunately, we do have a fascist groundswell in parts of this country, mainly among white men, let's be clear, but in small pockets among Black and brown men too. This happens to be a global phenomenon as women become more economically independent and seek positions of power. But friend of the show, Simon Rosenberg, points out that just like in 2020 and 2022, dozens of right-wing polls have been dumped into the marketplace in the last few weeks, 12 in Pennsylvania alone. Those polls then swing the polling averages to the right, making Trump look strong and Kamala Harris look stalled.
So she's trying to argue a point, doing mental gymnastics to make sense of the polling, that apparently a bunch of right-leaning polls have, come out swinging the averages over, right? And apparently, I guess if they are allegedly right-leaning polls, we shouldn't believe anything that's coming from that side. But then, to the same token, with MSNBC being clearly MSDNC, we obviously should not take anything that you're saying seriously. Correct, Joy? I want to show you something here concerning the gentleman that she's making reference to. I want to pull something up on the screen for you right now. This man is as DNC as you can get. Simon Rosenberg, who she's quoting here, right, and referencing to, is as DNC as you can get. Political strategist, commentator, hopium purveyor, NDN, DNC, DC, CC, Clinton War Room, ABC News, Salva Ukraine. And I was a little confused when I saw NDN. I said, what's NDN? NDN stands for New Democratic Network, founded in 1996, but was dissolved in 2004. So he was a part of the New Democrat Network. DNC, we all know what the DNC is. And then you see DCCC. Well, what is DCCC? The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. My point is that this man is as DNC as it can get. And when you're that DNC, that lets me know that by Joy Reid's logic, I can't trust anything that he's saying because he leans left, right? So if we can't trust these alleged right-leaning polls, how can I trust anything that's coming from Joy Reid or coming from this man, Simon Rosenberg, that she's quoting as being some sort of political strategist and expert? And furthermore, what goes to prove that you can't believe anything that comes out of Joy Reid's mouth, I submit to you this, right? Let's go back to the video with Joy Reid. I want to come back to this in closing. So she's sitting here doing all this talk about misinformation. She's talking Hitler talk. She's talking Putin talk. She's talking, insurrection 2.0 talk. And though you didn't hear her say Putin and insurrection 2.0 in the clip, in the larger clip she does, I just edited out this particular portion, right? But she's talking all the fear mongering talk, Hitler talk, Putin talk, insurrection 2.0 talk, all this type of stuff. And she's talking all this talk while saying that this stuff is the reason, right? These right-leaning polls that are being dumped into our laps, swaying the averages. This is the reason why the numbers are the way that they are. Once again, they're trying to make sense of it. They're trying to make sense of all the talk of Black and Hispanics running over to the Republican Party. They're trying to make sense of Donald Trump closing the gap in 2 months. And as they're talking all of this right-wing conspiracy theory, Putin, insurrection talk, what they're displaying to you are left-leaning articles that are saying this. That's number one. Axios, NPR, and the New York Times are left-leaning publications. We all know that to be true. So they're putting left-leaning publications up while telling you everything is the Republicans' fault and that they're all lying to you, but they're not showing you Republican or right-leaning publications. That's number one. Number two, when they put these articles up in front of you, what they don't expect you to do is actually read them. They actually know that you're not going to, that you're going to take them on face value. But when you go to, let's just say the article here, the first one, Axios, Trump tightens gap with Harris in 3 national polls. Now, when you actually go to this article and read it for yourself, as I'm going to pull it up for you right now, remember, she's making reference to all of these right-leaning, white supremacist Putin polls that are coming straight out of Russia, right, to swing the polling in favor of Trump. But in closing, when you actually come and read the article, who is Axios referencing? 3 national polls released Sunday depict a tightening presidential race, with former President Trump erasing recent gains from Vice President Kamala Harris with just 23 days to go. Why it matters? Harris started to pull away from Trump in several national polls in September, but all 3 new polls show neck and neck race nationally by the numbers. And when you go into the polls, you let me know, are these right-leaning Russian MAGA polls, or are these DNC polls, left-leaning polls? Poll number 1 that's being referenced, an ABC Ipsos poll of likely voters found Harris up 50% to Trump's 48%, down from a 6-point lead from Harris last month. You know how right-leaning ABC is, CBS YouGov poll, number 2. Now, that's a Russian poll if I ever heard of one. The CBS YouGov poll of likely voters showed Harris up 51% to 48%, down a 4-point lead in September. And we can't forget this Russian bot poll right here. An NBC poll of registered voters found a dead heat, 48 to 48, a major slide from 49 to 44 in Harris's favor last month. I could have swore we just listened to Joy Reid tell us that the polls that are being referenced to that are discussing that Donald Trump is closing the lead are all these white supremacist MAGA Putin polls. That's what she told us. That's what she told us. But when you actually go and read the articles for yourself, you'll see that these articles that are written by left-leaning publications are referencing left-leaning pollsters. So who's the real person that's spreading misinformation and disinformation? Who's the real person that's spewing dangerous rhetoric and fake news? We all know who that is. And it comes from the left-leaning DNC side of the mainstream media, which is essentially all of the mainstream media, with the exception, as I always say, of essentially Fox News and the New York Post when you're talking about mainstream media. As I always state in closing, the people who yell the loudest about misinformation and disinformation are the ones who engage in it the most. And with all that being said, that does it for today's news. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. And also don't forget to share this video out on your social media platforms to your family and friends. And also, please follow me on Telegram and Rumble. That is extremely important that you do so. Please follow me on Telegram and Rumble at TD Media Group. Both my Telegram and Rumble link will be in the description box below and pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you all for your time, and until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.